Alright, Chucky. Time to do your franchise some justice. I got this, buddy. What the fuck? Riley, what in the world are you doing with Chucky, honey bunny? Come here, give me Chucky. Come on, give me here. Oh shit. Alright people, welcome to my Child's Play review series. I'm going to be going through all of the Child's Play movies leading up to the release of Cult of Chucky in October, review all of them and end in a ranking video, and we're starting with the classic 1988 Child's Play right here, right now. So Child's Play tells the story of young Andy Barclay who gets a good guy doll for his birthday, but once he gets a hold of this doll named Chucky, people start to drop dead around him, and when all the adults will not believe Andy when he tells them the simple truth, Chucky did it. So right off the top, Child's Play gave birth to my second favorite horror icon of all time. You guys know me, you know I'm a Freddy fanatic, but Chucky has always been a very close second for me. Ironically enough, Chucky is the horror icon who introduced me to horror movies. I'll get into that whenever I get to that movie, but the first horror movie that I ever saw in my life when I was like 3 or 4 years old, yes, I was that young, born and bred, was a Child's Play movie. And what I've always loved about Chucky and what's always drawn me to him in the Child's Play movies is his personality. He is just a rotten little foul-mouthed bastard, and I love every second that Chucky is on screen. He is hilarious, he is visceral, he is evil down to his core, and he is a blast to watch. And in the original Child's Play, we get to see the birth and the origin of Chucky. There was a serial killer, the Lakeshore Strangler, by the name of Charles Lee Ray, played by Brad Dourif. At the very beginning of the movie, you see him gunned down by Chris Sarandon in a toy store. He transfers his soul into the doll. And so we have the setup for one of the creepiest 80s horror movies, one of the best slashers of the day, and the birth of one of the greatest horror icons that has ever donned the screen. You sadistic little bastard, I love you! I love this guy! So starting off with the positives for Child's Play. First and foremost, which is something that is not exclusive to this movie, it goes through the entire franchise, except for one, but we'll get to that. These movies are a blast to watch. No matter how dark, how gory, how demented these movies get, you always have fun watching them. And the credit for this first film in Child's Play, I'm going to give mostly to the director of Tom Holland. This is the guy that brought you the original Fright Night, one of the most fun and best vampire movies of the 80s, one of my favorite classic vampire movies for sure, and he brings a lot of those elements to Child's Play. It's got a lot of that kind of style that he had in Fright Night, where you kind of have a little bit of horror comedy elements slightly sprinkled throughout, but it definitely sticks the horror landing. It's there to scare you, it's there to be dark, it's there to creep you out. And the first movie succeeds in all of that, mostly because of the way that they utilize the camera whenever they have not revealed Chucky yet. It's really creepy to hear Andy very specifically say things that Chucky is telling him, like, Chucky wants to watch the 5 o'clock news, and Chucky said that that bitch got what she deserved, and all these things that you know, like, what the fuck did that little kid just say? But going back to the camera work, whenever they show Chucky's arm actually going out and like turning the oven on, and all these little creepy POV shots of him walking and running around, checking out the person that he's about to take out, you kind of get to live the murders through the eyes of Chucky in the first half of this movie. And it's a really interesting way to introduce a horror icon, because usually whenever they're introducing an icon, you get to see them do all the dirty deeds in third person. But in Child's Play, they put you inside Chucky up until that awesome reveal that Chucky is in fact alive. And the best scene of this entire movie, and one of the highlight scenes of the entire franchise.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you
filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
Ultimately, the slow and the creative build to the reveal of Chucky is what makes this movie stand out to me amongst the franchise. That is the element that I constantly go back to this one to experience again. That is what makes this movie kind of stick out amongst the pack of how crazy the franchise gets after the original. This one always has that element to it, that creative build to the reveal of Chucky. The rest of the movies, we don't need a reveal of Chucky because we know Chucky's the fucking killer. But in this movie, you get that, and it's awesome. Talking about some of the acting a little bit, you get Chris Sarandon, who is in Fright Night, so a little bit of a carryover in Tom Holland's previous work. And Chris Sarandon is great as the detective who not only gunned down Charles Lee Ray, but is trying to solve the further murders after his soul has been transferred into this doll. He brings a lot of that kind of personality and gravitas that he had from Fright Night while being very kind of naive and just constantly, yeah, whatever, lady, yeah, the doll's alive, whatever, I'm gonna catch you eventually, I'm gonna get you. And I love how his performance just kind of spins on its head after that scene whenever Chucky finally reveals himself to Chris Sarandon and tries sticking him with a knife throughout his car seat, and he's jumping around, bouncing around, trying to get away from it. Of all the characters in this first movie that we don't get to see going on in the franchise, I probably miss Chris Sarandon's character the most. I would love if in a further movie, maybe Cult of Chucky, possibly, it could happen, we get to see Chris Sarandon come back. That would be a great callback to the first movie, and that's a story, that's a character that I would actually like to see a little bit more wrap up with. Did he just give up after all of these Chucky murders throughout the rest of this franchise? He just wasn't around, or is he secretly trying to hunt down Chucky the whole time? Call it fan fiction. Maybe that'll be an episode of Pitch Wars. Keep an eye out for that one. Catherine Hicks plays the mother, Andy Barclay's mother, and she's really good in her role, especially whenever it comes to being a worried mother, because you get the first half of this movie where she honestly does not believe her son. I mean, who would? She thinks that maybe her son is doing these murders, maybe somebody's framing her son, maybe somebody else is coming around and doing all this stuff to just terrorize their lives. And just like Chris Sarandon, whenever that performance gets flipped, when Chucky reveals himself, you get to see a totally different side of that character. And now this mom is kind of a warrior. She's the one trying to convince everybody that Chucky's real. She's the one trying to convince Chris Sarandon that Chucky is real. She's the one trying to protect her son, trying to kill this evil little fucking doll. And it's a really cool duality that you get to see her go throughout this movie of ignorant, worried mother to warrior and protector. Although one element of her character always bugs the shit out of me when I watch this movie. Why in the world would you take the biggest present on your kid's birthday stack and put clothes in the box? What a bitch.
You stupid bitch!
And then you have the star of the movie, the one that goes forward into Child's Play 2 and is returning in Cult of Chucky, Alex Vincent as Andy Barclay. And I'm gonna be honest, his acting is just okay in this movie. I don't think he's really that impressive as a child actor. He tends to drag a lot of his lines like, Chucky wants to watch the 5 o'clock news. And even just the way that he says the word Chucky in this movie kind of grinds my gears every time I hear it. Chucky! Like there's a space between K and Y. Nitpicking, I know. But with that being said, even though his acting does fall a little bit flat for a child actor, even though he does have a few ticks as a young kid that does annoy me a little bit, he does perform well whenever it comes to scenes of him being scared, of him being worried, like whenever he's locked up and he feels Chucky's gonna come and get him and he starts crying and yelling for the doctor, Chucky's gonna kill me! So all in all, his performance is serviceable. I think he does get better, and we'll talk about that soon. And honestly, despite all that, it doesn't matter in the end because the storyline between Andy Barclay and Chucky is the heart of this series. It's the heart of this movie. Just the way that the story progresses between these two characters. First, it's like this innocent child getting caught up in this murderer's game, and then it's a slasher movie where nobody believes that the kid is innocent, and then in the third act he realizes that he has to transfer his soul into Andy Barclay because that's the first person that he told his true identity to.
You have to transfer your soul out of the doll into that of the first human being you revealed your true self to.
You mean the first person I let in on the fact that I was really alive? I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. The first person I let in on my little secret was a 6-year-old kid. I'm gonna be 6 years old again.
And now in the third act, the clock is ticking, the race is on, the stakes are high, and it just builds to this ultimate confrontation where Chucky is going at it with everything that he has to get inside this little kid's body. And that's another crazy thing about Child's Play that really helps this series kind of stand out amongst the other slasher franchises, is that the final girl in most of the Child's Play movies is a little kid.
Andy, no, please. We're friends to the end, remember?
This is the end, friend.
But the star of this movie, as is the rest of the Child's Play franchise, to me is absolutely Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky. Now, you do get to see him in his physical form as Charles Lee Ray in the opening of this movie, which is only something you see later on in Curse of Chucky, possibly maybe even Cult of Chucky again. We don't know. But his voice work, his delivery, the personality that he injects into this evil little fucking doll is gold. This is one of the few times when I will honestly say, if Brad Dourif is not playing Chucky, I am not interested at all. This guy is Chucky to me. He is synonymous with Chucky. Nobody can or ever will do better in that role than Brad Dourif.
Oh, God, I'm dying. You hear that, you son of a bitch?
And can we talk about how awesome that chant is?
Give me the power, I beg of you!
Oh, sorry. Got caught up in the moment. Something else that's great about Chucky is the animatronic work. It still holds up really well. All the way from 1988 to today, you could still watch this movie and be impressed with what they were able to do with that animatronic doll. You see a lot of the facial expressions, you see a lot of the way that the dialogue matches up with it, you see a lot of physical work as far as fighting with everybody and kind of having his little angry face and everything like that, even his laughing face. Everything they did with the animatronics in this movie is great. But despite how many things I love about this original Child's Play, the movie's not flawless. Some things have not aged so well, and we're going to get into that. While I was talking about the animatronics of Chucky and how great that was and how well that's aged, there's a few shots in this movie where they put a little person in a Chucky costume and had them run around. Those scenes have not aged so well, especially the one whenever it's towards the third act of the movie and he's actually walking towards Andy before and after he gets melted. Those really look rough to me. There's another scene as well whenever they're in the hospital room and the little person jumps on top of a little hospital bed and runs out the window, and you can tell that that's a person in a costume. It doesn't look as good as the animatronics, which sounds strange that somebody in a costume doesn't look as good as a fake doll. But the way that the effects are with those animatronics, they're way more impressive with the physical, practical effects they had with somebody in a costume, at least in my opinion. But ultimately, the biggest thing that holds this movie back for me as I look at it as a part of the entire franchise isn't really this movie's fault, it's just the fact that it came first, is that Chucky isn't quite realized fully in this movie. They didn't quite know what they had. They didn't quite know how far they could take Chucky. They didn't realize that they had an icon in their hands in this original movie. So when you watch the further sequels, you get to see Chucky unleashed. You get to see him at 110%. You get to see him cranked up to 11, one-liners everywhere, great lines, great laugh, great everything. And in this movie, it's scaled down quite a bit just because they didn't quite know what they had yet.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Even to the way that they utilize Chucky as far as the mystery of this movie, which is great as far as the style of this original movie, and it's what helps it stick out amongst the franchise, the fact that Chucky is hidden for the first half of the movie. But whenever you go back to it, if you're just craving Chucky and Chucky at his best, this movie doesn't quite deliver all of that the way that some of the other sequels have. But even despite those negatives, this movie is an absolute classic. It's a great movie. It is one of my favorites of the franchise. Even though Chucky isn't fully realized, the mystery aspects, Tom Holland's directing, the first introduction that we get to Chucky, Chris Sarandon, the introduction of Charles Lee Ray, and the origins of Chucky, everything that you get in this movie that you don't get in those further sequels makes this movie stand out, and it makes me love it just the same as when I first saw it as a young kid. Now, in my Nightmare on Elm Street review series, every single video I chose my scariest or my favorite scene. I'm going to change it up a little bit for Chucky. Chucky, I'm going to choose my favorite one-liner of the movie. And though my favorite scene in this movie is the Chucky reveal whenever Catherine Hicks is about ready to throw him into the fire, my favorite Chucky one-liner is whenever the orderly passes him in the elevator and says, "What an ugly doll." And then Chucky says,
"Ugly doll.
Fuck you.
Classic. So if you're living under a rock and you have not seen the original Child's Play for whatever reason or whatever excuse you decide to give me, stop what you are doing now because you're missing out on a bona fide classic and the start of one of the greatest horror icons in horror history. So go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of the original Child's Play? Does this movie really stand out amongst the rest of the sequels to you? Or the fact that Chucky's fully realized in those other movies kind of hold this one back for you? Put all of your thoughts, pros and cons, for the original Child's Play down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out some of my social media links down below, I've got Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that you can check out, as well as my Patreon page where I have a lot of exclusive content for patron eyes only, including the ability to choose the topic of videos for me to do either on a one-time basis or monthly, depending on what tier you choose to subscribe to. And it's a great way to financially help this channel and support what I do. So check that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including the rest of this Child's Play franchise, you can check it out by clicking right over here.